the CIA program that drugged 7,000 American soldiers without their knowledge.
The following is based on declassified U.S. government documents.
Imagine waking up and not knowing who you are. Not a metaphor. Not a nightmare you shake off over coffee. You wake up and your hands don't feel like yours. The ceiling is breathing. The man next to you is melting into his uniform. You try to speak, but the words come out wrong. You try to stand, but the floor won't hold still. You are a soldier of the United States Army. You volunteered for what they called a research study. They told you it was routine, a few tests, a couple of days. They never told you about the drug. They never told you that for the next several hours or days, or in some cases weeks, your mind would be completely dismantled, rebuilt, tested like a machine. And when it was over, they told you nothing happened. This is not fiction. This is the record. It's 1951. The Cold War is not cold at all. American soldiers are coming back from Korea, and something is wrong with them. Men who were prisoners of war are returning with altered beliefs, reciting communist doctrine, denouncing their own country on camera. The press calls it brainwashing. The military calls it a crisis. In Washington, CIA Director Allen Dulles sits behind a classified report. According to intelligence intercepts, the Soviet Union has been researching a substance, a chemical compound, that could break a man's mind open like a lock. Make him say anything, believe anything, do anything. The Soviets, it was feared, had already acquired massive quantities of this compound. Its name, LSD. Dulles is described in internal memos as, and this is a direct characterization from declassified records, literally terrified. He doesn't wait for confirmation. He doesn't wait for ethics committees. He doesn't wait for Congress. He launches a program, first called Project Bluebird, then Project Artichoke. Eventually, it becomes the program the world would come to know as MKUltra. The mission, find a way to control the human mind before the Soviets do. The method, use American soldiers, prisoners, hospital patients, and civilians, most of them without their knowledge, as human test subjects. The man chosen to run it, a soft-spoken chemist named Sidney Gottlieb. Gottlieb had a clubfoot and a stutter. He folk danced in his spare time. He grew Christmas trees on his farm in Virginia. He was also the most dangerous scientist in America. Gottlieb understood something the military didn't want to admit. LSD was not just a drug. It was a weapon. And a weapon you couldn't see, couldn't smell, and couldn't trace was the most terrifying kind. In 1953, Gottlieb arranged for the CIA to purchase, in a single transaction, the entire global supply of LSD. The price? $240,000. The seller? Sandoz Laboratories in Switzerland, the only company producing it at scale. The United States government now owned every drop of the world's most powerful mind-altering substance, and they needed someone to test it on. That's where the soldiers came in, under the framework of what was officially described as human volunteer research. Thousands of U.S. Army personnel were recruited for experiments at facilities across the country, including Edgewood Arsenal in Maryland, one of the military's most secretive research installations. They were told they were helping develop treatments for battlefield injuries, chemical exposure countermeasures, routine science. What actually happened was something else. Soldiers were given LSD, often without knowing what it was, and then monitored, observed, interrogated, filmed. Some were placed in sensory deprivation chambers. Some were subjected to extreme psychological pressure during the experience. Some were given the drug repeatedly over days. One documented case from Project Artichoke describes an agent kept under LSD influence for 77 consecutive days. Let that number land. 77 days. Not an afternoon. Not a bad trip on a weekend. 77 days with a chemically dismantled mind inside a government facility with no ability to consent, no ability to leave, no knowledge of what was being done to him. And the researchers, they watched. They took notes. They filed reports. A 1952 memo, now declassified, describes one experiment as successful because the subject experienced total amnesia of the event. He couldn't remember what happened to him. That was considered a positive outcome. But Gottlieb wasn't done. The Army experiments were controlled environments, sterile, predictable. Gottlieb wanted to know what LSD would do to a person in the wild, so in 1954, the CIA launched Operation Midnight Climax. At 225 Chestnut Street in San Francisco, the CIA rented an apartment. A federal narcotics agent named George White was put in charge of decorating it. White hung French can posters on the walls, red curtains on the windows, a two-way mirror on the bedroom wall, with a hidden observation room on the other side. Then he hired prostitutes. The women were instructed to bring men back to the apartment. Unsuspecting men. Strangers from bars, from beaches, from restaurants. Once inside, the men were secretly dosed with LSD, slipped into their drinks without any indication of what was coming. White sat on the other side of the mirror, martini in hand, and watched. He wrote field reports. He logged behavioral observations. The CIA paid for everything. This operation ran for nearly a decade. Similar safehouses were operating simultaneously in New York City and Marin County. Hundreds of people, civilians, with no military connection, no security clearance, no knowledge of what was happening to them, were used as involuntary test subjects by their own government. And here is the detail that makes this story worse. George White, in his personal diary, described this work as the best time of his life. I toiled wholeheartedly in the vineyards, he wrote, because it was fun. The man running a CIA program that drugged innocent civilians without consent thought it was fun. Not everyone inside the program was comfortable. Dr. Frank Olson was an Army biochemist working with the CIA. In November 1953, he attended a meeting at a remote cabin in the Maryland woods, a gathering of 10 scientists. At some point during the weekend, Sidney Gottlieb secretly added LSD to the group's after-dinner liqueur. Olson had a severe reaction. He became paranoid, withdrawn. He told colleagues he wanted to leave the program, that what they were doing was wrong. 9 days later, Frank Olson fell from the window of a New York City hotel room on the 10th floor. The government called it suicide. His family never accepted that. In 1994, 40 years later, Olson's body was exhumed. A forensic examination found evidence of a blow to the head before the fall. The case was never prosecuted. In 1973, as investigations began to close in, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of all MKUltra files, thousands of documents, shredded, gone. But Helms made one mistake. Some files had been misfiled in a financial archive and were never destroyed. In 1977, those files were discovered during a routine inventory. Over 20,000 documents survived. They were enough to confirm everything. A Senate investigation followed. Gottlieb testified under a fake name. He was never charged with a crime. He retired to his farm in Virginia, grew his Christmas trees, and died in 1999. The official estimate of American soldiers exposed to LSD through Army programs alone exceeds 7,000 men. The civilian number, through programs like Midnight Climax, has never been fully determined. Many victims never knew they were part of an experiment. Many still don't. No one went to prison. The program ran for 20 years. And the question that the declassified files never fully answer, the question that remains open, is whether MKUltra ever actually ended, or whether it simply changed its name. This is cold record. The file stays open. Sources: declassified CIA documents, Church Committee Senate hearings 1975 to 77, National Security Archive, IT records. New episode next week. Image sources: National Archives, CIA FOIA Reading Room, all public domain.